And welcome to Writers and Their Pets. I'm Catherine Sullivan. I'll be moderating this panel, and I'd like the other writers to introduce themselves and their pets. Let's see, I'll go over to Sharon because she's right next to me on my screen.
My name is Sharon Lee. I currently am accompanied by a pet, but he's over there. You can't see him. I am co-author with Steve Miller of the Liaden Universe series, in which there are many cats and other creatures. Steve and I have kept cats together in real life, I guess, for more than 30 years.
Since 1979.
I don't have an adding machine. I can't do this.
Well, since I broke in here, I'm Steve Miller, and this is my current assistant. This is Belle, and Belle is a Maine Coon. We currently have 3 Maine Coons in our household who help us. Generally, we have co-pilot's chairs, but often the cats prefer live lap to co-pilot's chairs. And I have been writing since my first published work was in 1968. And I've been writing science fiction professionally since about 1976.
So that would have been Arwen. Arwen would have been your cat.
Arwen was my assistant then. Cats, I might talk about later. She was a scientist. She proved things.
Like gravity?
Other things.
Space travel, time travel.
SNR?
I'm Shari. I write as SNR, and I'm joined by Dobie. She's actually got an Irish name that literally means black dog, Madadev. And we call her Dobie for short. She is a Shetland sheepdog, and she either lives on my lap or in her chair. I may be joined by Twig, who's also a Shetland sheepdog, who's a tricolor, black, brown, and white. At some point a little later. She's upstairs voicing her opinions at the neighborhood and the state of things out there. I often have my assistant with me when I'm working or writing here. So.
And again, I'm Catherine Sullivan. This is my assistant, Bela. Named after a male composer, but then she laid an egg, so I just changed the spelling. She's 34. I adopted her when she was 4 years old. And so she has opinions. And so in case I go mute, it's because she's voicing the opinions loudly at the top of the voice. She inspires me a lot because I tend to like to write about birds. I've always owned birds all my life. My dad didn't let his kids have any pets other than turtles and birds. And I was the only one in the family that when we all moved out, I kept with birds. So I like to write about griffins and bird-like aliens, and it kind of helps to have one near me. So Sharon, Steve, anybody want to chime in on your influences on your writing by your bird companions?
Opinions. Well, as I started to say earlier, the Liaden universe is well populated with cats. Most of the characters in the Liaden universe are well disposed toward cats. I would hesitate to say that if you meet a character who doesn't like a cat, he's a bad guy, but you go a little cautious around them. We owe a great debt actually to a man named Paul Corey, who wrote a book called Do Cats Think? Way back. And in it, he detailed the way that cats communicate with people. The grinning, the slow smile, where they squint their eyes together and are very, very pleased to see you. The high tail, the question mark tail. And that was it was like, he was writing about alien communication. It was amazing. And we had the aliens write with us and could practice on them. So I think that's kind of how they snuck into the fiction, because it's another intelligence.
Paul Corey wrote are cats people and do cats think? And he also was a writer of fiction. He had companions, and he saw them as companions. And we need to be careful when we say, yes, there are cats in the Liaden universe, because generally the cats in the Liaden universe are not pets. And in a lot of ways, our cats here are assistants or insistents. And they have a voice in what goes on in the house. We live in the house that we do in part because we had thought about going to a condo, and a lot of condos don't allow pets or cats. We also had a place that we had looked at moving, and they said, but you can't have more than 40 pounds worth of cats or 40 pounds worth of pets.
Yes.
And that's 3 Maine Coon cats. And the divisible goes towards the cats rather than the acceptance, because, you know, the Maine Coons run 12, 15, 18, 20, 22 pounds, something like that. Belle lost some weight and got down to 13 pounds.
And we were concerned.
And our small cat, we lost Scrabble. We'd had 4 cats for a long time, and we lost Scrabble last year. About this time, I guess. And Scrabble was a little cat. She was not a Maine Coon cat, and she weighed over 12 pounds. So the cats had a voice in where we moved, and they had input in the kinds of places, because we'd look out. When we were moving to this house, we'd look out the windows of the houses we looked at. Nope, nothing to see there. There's no place for the birds. There's no place for the cats to lay. And so they really acted in a lot of ways as an additional filter for us. And whether they were there to say, no, this won't do for me, we would look around and say, nope, this won't do for them.
And I will mention that we do not have a house with a huge main staircase like many Maine houses have, because cats like to lay on stairs. And you don't want to endanger yourself either. As you're getting older, we decided to live in place. So our current house is long and flat.
Like Catherine, I grew up with pets, only unlike Catherine, they were always dogs. And so the only time I didn't have dogs where I lived was when I was in university and was living in dorms or apartments. And then after my husband and I got our first house, we needed to make sure that we were stable enough financially after buying the house. So as soon as we're like, yes, we have the good jobs, yes, we're paying our house payments, and if an emergency vet bill comes up, we can pay it. Yes, getting a dog now. So we've had a dog in our house for almost as long as we've been here, often 2 dogs, because we have Shelties and they like to have a companion. They don't do well as solo dogs. I've always liked animals, and my husband's allergic to cats, so we can't have cats in the house. My daughter and I both have asthma, and so there have been times when she's like, oh, I would really like a bunny. And I'm like, okay, we have to find a way to test drive that to see if it's going to kill one of us. So that's no good. We tend to take having animals in our house with us very seriously. It's not just, oh, let's get an animal. Oh, it doesn't work out. Rehome the animal. We do our research and plan first. But animals do show up in my stories. I primarily write young adult fantasy. I have a series out right now. I'm actually doing a reading later today from the first book, and it has a cat shapeshifter in it. And my goal was to really nail the cat behavior. And so, I had studied cats. I have friends who have cats. Let me play with your cats. I babysit the cats across the street when the folks go away on vacation. Not recently, obviously, but in the past. And then my dogs usually end up in stories. I have at least one story for each of my dogs. So Dovey doesn't have her story yet. She's only 2, so I haven't quite figured out what her story is, but each of my dogs has a story.
one of the things that happened to me when I was planning on being a professional writer and working at it, I was submitting stories, but I had not yet been published by Amazing, so I feel like I wasn't a professional yet in that regard, is that I got to meet with and work with, to some extent, Roger Zelazny. And Roger was, he lived in my neighborhood, in my neighborhood, meaning close to the college that I was attending. And I was started the science fiction club accidentally because a couple of us were sitting around a table and said, there ought to be a science fiction club. And I said, yes, there should. And about 10 minutes later, I was president. So we had, and it was we called it the Infinity Circle, and Roger Zelazny was nearby, and I had located his name in a newspaper article, and I invited him to come to the club and give us a talk, and he did that, and he literally started my career because he brought with him hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of old science fiction magazines and books that he had no room for. And he was trying to give them to the library, and the library only wanted the hardbacks. They didn't want the paperbacks. So suddenly I was inundated with about 3,000 science fiction magazines, and I had an article to write, so I wrote an article about receiving science fiction magazines. I got to know Roger pretty well, and I went to his house. He invited me to his massive writing room, which was the entire basement, and he had it set up that way for tax purposes, so that his writing room was in fact larger than the rest of the upstairs of the house. He had 3 typewriters there, and as we were sitting and talking, I kept hearing this dum da da dum da da dum da da dum da da dum, dum da da dum da da dum da da dum da da dum, and finally he broke down, burst out laughing, looked up, he said, "That's just the cats." And I'm listening to these horses running overhead, going dum da da dum da da. I'm like, "Where are they?" He says, "Oh, well, you see, it's a false ceiling, and what they do is they go run down there, and about then, falling out of the fireplace came a cat." And it was a very beautiful looking Siamese style cat, and came out and ran over to me, looked at me, and leapt into my lap. And it was like, "You're my best friend ever." And I said, "I just met you, you know." And he said, "Watch out for that cat, watch out." And I said, "Why?" And this cat is nuzzling my face, and he had 2 bald spots right here in front of his ears, and it looked like, well, we call that one Satan. And this cat is doing this and giving me burbles, and he called his wife and said, "Come see this." So she came down and looked, see what was going on. I had a beer, Roger had a beer, the cat was like this, and he looked, he says, "That cat bit Norman Spinrad the first time he laid eyes on him."
Almost I bit Norman the first time I met him.
And he named like 3 different people who had visited his house, 3 professional science fiction people who had visited his house, and who had either gotten cold shoulders or bit. And this cat was in my lap. And every time I visited Roger's house after that, Satan, wherever in the house, would hear my voice and come run down and fling itself into my lap. So I got this feeling that writers should have cats, in part from that too. Of course, there was always Andre Norton as an example of somebody who should have cats. And Catherine's going like this. Did you know Andre?
No, I would have loved to meet her, but
She was. I was lucky enough that very early on in my career, somebody sent her one of my stories, and she sent me a fan mail about my story, my very first published story, and that was amazing. And then later on, Sharon and I got to correspond with her quite frequently. And of course, she was somebody else who used cats a lot. And I shouldn't go in too far into this because you've got stories, you've got a panel coming up dealing with that. But it seemed that all of the correspondence that I had, and then I met on Anne McCaffrey, and among the first 10 minutes of our conversation, we were blithering along about our cats. Here I got to meet one of the great writers in the field, and we're comparing cat stories. I mean, we have on our wall here somewhere, I'm not sure where it got to right now, a picture that Ann sent to Sharon and I. Again, we corresponded for a good while.
A picture of Pumpkin. Pumpkin was a Maine Coon cat, and Anne had decided to take up our cause, and I was afraid she was going to get us, fired from Del Rey at this point, but she was going to take up the cause of the Liaden University. She had a picture taken of her and Pumpkin sitting here in front of her to be read pile, and in the to be read pile are 2 Liaden books, and I'm like, oh, it's like, this is our new publicity picture. She wanted us to have it. When Steve and I first met, speaking of cats and how we got them, I did have a cat, but I had grown up with dogs. So when Archie came on board, I did all the right things. I got him a box with a blanket, and I put a clock in the box with the blanket, which was, this is in the 1970s, so this is how we treated puppies, and we didn't crate them or anything. And I set that all up in the room. Put the kitten in the box, got in bed. The kitten was in bed before I was, of course, doing, hey, how come you get to keep the good stuff? I mean, if you want to lay in the box with the damn clock in your ear, go right ahead, but I know where this is. But Steve and I met a little bit after that, and we decided we were going to move in together for reasons that weren't any reasons at that point. And we went walking to a house that was for rent, and a cat crossed the street to say hello to him. A big high tail. Hey, you're moving to the neighborhood? Great. And whenever we went for a walk, the cats would come like from nowhere to check in with Steve, to let him know that, yeah, he was welcome, and good to see you, guy. Where you been? It was very strange. But hey, I kept him anyway.
Cat magnet.
Oh,
Is that me? No. I turned off everything.
I think it's a distant phone somewhere.
Mm.
I think we're okay. The thing with the cats and being able to write, I mentioned very early on that I'd had a cat who was a scientist, and I was part of my early job was that I was writing hundreds of inches of copy for local newspapers. Every week I would go to the garden club and write a garden club article. I would go to the local police department and get all the cop log and write that stuff up, and who had been arrested for what and where. I would go to rock and roll concerts until 2 a.m, stay up, write the article, and drive it and deliver it to the newspaper editor at 7 o'clock in the morning, knock on his door, give it to him. And so I was doing a whole lot of that. And my cat, Arwen, who had been a rescue, as so many of the cats had been, would accompany me. If I set up the typewriter and started typing at night, it didn't matter how long I was typing, she would be either leaning against my foot or sitting on my chess table, knocking pieces onto the floor so she'd have enough room watching me. And she did that. She did that quite a bit in those, in that old apartment. I was still married to my first wife when this stuff was going on, but she was a scientist, and this helped us helped me understand that the cats are that somebody is there, as in Paul Corey's thing. Are cats people? They do communicate, and Arwen would take a ping pong ball. She had 2 ping pong balls, and one of them had pink writing on it, and one had blue writing on it, and for some reason the pink was the one that was her favorite. And she would run it around the house and throw it up, blam it against the wall like this, that, this. And one day she discovered that the water bowl, which was ceramic, sounded different than the wall, and she brought the ball in, and she blammed it from one side, and it was going ding, 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 and she took it around to the other side and used her other paw, bling, bling. She must have spent 3 hours testing the ball from different things, knocking it off the wall, cling over here, ding, cling, and ping. And she had a great time. She was highly entertaining, and I hope I got my story in that time on time. I probably did. But I had that kind of company pretty much for the years before Sharon and I got together. And then the first time I visited Sharon, her cat attached himself to me, which apparently had not been her experience with other people who wanted to date her.
Bring a guy in for a cup of coffee, and he would go, "I thought you told me you had a cat." Yeah, no, cat's hiding.
My first Sheltie conducted science experiments.
Uh-oh.
Husband just got home.
Okay.
Must be greeted.
Yes, absolutely.
She'll be back.
Okay.
He came home with groceries, so we have to check that out.
Investigate everything.
But our first Sheltie would conduct science experiments. She had a rare skin condition which could cause her to lose hair and get muscle wasting. So she was on medication, and it was well controlled. But she knew that when I came home from work, I would let her outside. Then she would come in. She'd come to the counter. I'd give her medicine, and then she would get a really tasty treat because we felt so bad about her. She took medicine 3 times a day, and so we gave her like actual meat, for her treats for taking her medicine. So she started doing this thing where she would go right out the door and turn around, come straight back in and go to the counter. Then she would go ring the bells. I would head to open the door, and then she'd go to the counter. She's like, okay, which steps can I cut out and still
get the treat? Okay.
Still get the snack.
That's social engineering. That's not.
So it's like, what can I do to get what I want? So, and we are convinced that it was a very good thing she didn't have thumbs, because shortly after we brought her home as a 7 or 8 week old puppy, we caught her staring at the doorknob where the bags of dog food and treats were kept. She's like, I know they're in there, and I know that thing will get me into that space. So she did get into the refrigerator once.
Oh,
or magic.
Celery everywhere.
We had a cat at one point who had double paws, and the multi paws. And if her paw had been, she was a small cat, thank God. If her hand had been any bigger, she would have been able to. And she tried. She did try. She knew what the doorknob was, and she would but just a little too small.
At one point, we had. You heard me talking about having the cats run right up to me and crossing highways or whatever. Well, we ran into an experience at a very early Balticon that we were attending together. Was that Bonnie Dalzell was at the convention, and Bonnie Dalzell, if you're not familiar with Bonnie as an artist,
beautiful dogs, beautiful.
You really ought to. But she had a habit, and she still does, of having little puppies. Right now, she has puppy Bruce. These are what? Irish Wolfhounds?
Irish Wolfhounds.
Ooh, those are big dogs.
And we were art agents at that point, so we're bringing in the art. And Bonnie is there with 2 of her dogs, I think. And I sat down to rest, and the dog came
in an art show
and put his head in my lap. His head fills my lap now. And I'm sitting there, and Bonnie's like, oh, he really likes you. And I'm like, great, he really likes me. By the end of the art show, he came to look for me. He was like wasting away. I have this admirer in the art show. And she said, you want him? And I'm like, I live in a 900 square foot townhouse. Yes, I want him, but no, it's just not going to work. So we parted regretfully.
Yeah, he was, in his way, he was very cat-like. And he was very, very, how do I want to put it, persuasive. When we moved to Maine, and we're still living in a small apartment in Maine, but looking to perhaps rent a house, and we were considering renting a house, and thought, well, gee, eventually maybe we will get a dog. And instead what happened is that we went out to some people who had wolfhounds, and we went out and visited, and none of the dogs would come near us. And they introduced us to a particular person who was so If I'm sitting in this chair here, he was about this tall on me. And he came up and he like looked at us and turned his back on us. Now, whether that was because he understood that we were going to be taking him away if we did, and he didn't want to go away or whatever, but it was the most persuasive argument we've ever had.
It was very cat-like, the whole turning the back, and so we let that part go. We now have large cats. And it does work out better because we do live in Maine, and taking the dogs for a walk in January, wow.
Of course, Sherry's in Minnesota, so I was taking
You have to take her for a walk.
And I think
Oh no, your public is here, really.
Yes. Previous bird I had was a Quaker parrot, and he basically would be on my shoulder all the time. Bela has her set bedtime, so I am allowed writing time in the evening because, yes, she puts herself to bed around 6:30 at night. The
All right, then.
room has to be closed, the lights have to be off, her cover has to be on, and that's it. Like, okay, I don't have this thing on my shoulder. I can go write.
I can go. Does she also need to get up at 4 o'clock?
We talked her down to about, I used to get up for work early when I had my day job. She's not a morning bird.
Oh, okay.
I'd have to wake her up before I left the house. Now that I'm retired, yeah, because she didn't want to be woken up sooner.
Okay.
But now that I'm retired, she'll just sit there and chew on the bird cage cover until I come and wake her up. So
She just bobbed her head when you were mentioning her name, just like that. Does she react to her
Bela
name?
knows her name.
Bela? Is it Bela?
Yeah, her previous owners named her after Bela Bartov, and then found out it was a she. So I just changed her name to a little more feminine.
Oh no, she's.
Do the daylight hours impact her activity at all?
Yeah.
Beg pardon?
Do daylight hours, so, as the days are getting longer now?
He is lousy at changing from daylight savings time. Oh, man. No, because I have no idea how she tells time, but she can. So even though it's still light out, she's decided, no, I'm going to bed now.
Okay.
I have no idea how she works it, but okay. Now she wants to go over to her perch. So this is, got this little gym set up there. Sure.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's the bird room.
That's an outfit.
Yeah.
Hang on. Excuse me, cat service.
Oh. And somebody's asking, where's your pet? I think she
Come on.
might need to show Belle in the lap again.
Well, Bella's just gotten in the window.
Uh,
So we'll let her be in the window.
yeah, Belle left a little bit ago with a thurump. We were showing birds.
We're showing birds what. But she just came into my room and has gotten in the window. It's time to overlook the bird feeders.
They must be supervised.
Yes, well, at least counted.
Cat television.
Yes.
Have you ever tried that with your dog? We do have some tapes and some videos around that we put on our big screen TV, and the cats will go wild for the
Interesting.
videos. And
One of the really interesting things they do is they will see a squirrel or a bird on the television set, and they'll jump up and go around behind because they know it's a window, right? So
Our dogs mostly react to the sounds on the like whether it's TV or recording. So if they hear a doorbell, a lot of doorbells on TV don't sound like a doorbell to my dogs, and so they're like, man, we don't know what that is. But if they hear a doorbell or a knock that sounds like it could be real, they will run upstairs and go to the door to check it out.
okay.
During the pandemic, we've been recording little videos of, here's what we've done recently, here's what we did today, and share them with our family members who we can't see. My dad has two Shelties who are the sisters of my Shelties. And his younger one whenever she hears my voice, will be like, oh, I have to be up on your lap. I need to, and she'll look for us on his desk. And yeah, so, and all of them react if they hear a recording of themselves barking. So because some of our videos include, here's the dogs chasing each other through the yard, and if I'm playing it back or doing editing, the dogs are like, what? How can we be in there? We're not in there. We're out here.
We're out here. Wait, how can you be in this little
Come
thing?
check it out.
The thing about the thing about cats and being people and aware, we've seen arguments from people who are literally ignorant because they say no, they're not self-aware, they're only reacting to this, that, or the other. When we moved to Maine, we did it in two vehicles. One was a rental truck with a governor on it, which meant I couldn't drive it over 56 miles an hour. Even going downhill and kicking it as hard as we couldn't get that. And Sharon was driving the Beretta, and at one point
I had two cats with me, and Steve had Arwen in the truck. So I had Archie and Brandy with me. And
we were in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, where there was an incredible traffic mix-up going on, and we got separated. And
by a flagman. The truck went through, and the flagman went, and the truck is gone. I don't do maps, so I'm lost already, okay? Steve is going down the road. Archie gets crazy. Archie starts yelling.
It's like he knew that I was in the truck and the truck wasn't there.
And the truck wasn't there. Where the hell is Steve? We lost Steve. So we had CBs. Back in the Stone Age, we still had CBs. And I turned on the CB and I said, we've gotten separated and Archie's going nuts. And Steve said, Archie, and started to talk through the microphone, and Archie went up and looked at the microphone like, well, I don't know how he's in there, but all right. As long as we didn't leave him alone.
And he calmed down, and we finally managed to rendezvous in a McDonald's parking lot. And after that, when I pulled out ahead, he was getting restless, and I would just every so often, hello, Archie, hey, Archie, and he would be fine. It was a really interesting thing in the how conscious are these creatures, how these friends of ours, how aware are they? And again, I had a job teaching people who were disabled and had no who had no experience with computers, how to use computers all over. And I was traveling all over the state of Maine, and I would call into home and talk to the cat. I believe at that point that was
Hexapuma.
That was, yeah. And I would talk, and hi, I'm there, how are you? And he'd come up and push against the telephone and have some commentary there. And so apparently they could pay attention enough to understand that who they were hearing over the phone, if not, certainly not how, but who, and get, so companions, yes.
And people.
I've gotten bird videos, the training bird videos where the birds are supposed to listen to. Nah. But if I record on my phone, Bella will be right there watching herself and admiring herself.
Oh,
You're not paying at all, are you?
No, not much. I had parakeets as a kid, but they didn't. They actually weren't there for me. I mean, I would try to talk to them and stuff, and they were like, give me a shell. Give me one of the little things to sharpen their beaks on. That was about their concern. My sister had a cockatiel for a while, and seemed to really have a rapport with it. So that kind of enlightened me.
Yeah, because I went up through parakeets and cockatiels and conures.
Moving up, okay.
And then found the right cockatoo because, like a lot of people my age, I watched Beretta and it's like, cockatoo, that is so cool. Cockatoos are really opinionated, are really strong. That beak could break a broomstick. She's never been with anybody. And really cuddly. They want attention a lot.
You
Right
will
now,
pay attention to me.
over
I'm
there
the
trying to
best thing in
build.
your life.
Yeah, and although she's 30, she still has the emotional maturity of a 2-year-old. So it's like, yeah, I got a kid for the. He's going to outlive me. I'm already keeping an eye out on my great nieces and see who might be a bird person.
How long do cockatoos normally live?
This breed, 80 years.
Okay.
She's only 30, so.
Okay.
Whoa.
Wow.
That's one of those things where it's important to, research them going in and then figure out, okay, if the bird outlives me, who's going to take care of it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, because I mean, some of the smaller breeds of birds, like the conures, are usually about 25 years, but yeah, she's gonna be around.
Okay.
She does learn words too, because she'll say hi, what you doing? I don't know, Bela a lot. Love you if she's in the good mood. But because when I first adopted her at 4, her previous owner said, "Oh, she doesn't talk." We're driving home from St. Paul, and I hear this little voice going, "Hello, hello." There were 3 other cockatoos in that household and a dog, and they just didn't listen to her.
No,
Oh,
you've got to talk.
you've got to pay attention to them, no matter what kind of pet you have. I mean, it's just to the people who have outside dogs and they just put them outside and they don't pay any attention to them. I just don't understand.
That was unfortunately my parents. We as a child, we had moved from the middle of Baltimore City to the far reaches of Baltimore County, and my parents thought they ought to have a dog to help protect, and ended up with a German Shepherd who had been shell shocked. She was he was a trooper's dog, and the trooper had gotten shot in front of the dog.
Oh my gosh.
And the dog had apparently brought down the perpetrator, and gotten injured himself in the ruckus. But his man had gotten seriously injured, and then went gun shy.
Oh.
The dog went gun shy, and we ended up with this police-trained German Shepherd. Well, my mother wouldn't let him in the house. He was going to be an outside dog, and ended up living in an old chicken house that was on the property. And they got another dog to be with him, also an outside dog. And they were not allowed in the house, and none of their puppies were allowed in the house past 6 or 8 weeks. They just would not conceive of having them as, and that probably affected me a whole lot, because there were dogs around, and they were friendly dogs. One of them got named Puppy, and he was large enough to be a purebred German Shepherd, although he wasn't. And he saved my life probably at one point, because we were visiting Liberty Lake, which was right across the way from our house, and a troop of dogs came running out of the woods. There were wild dogs, and they were dogs that were feral.
Feral.
And they were known to take in that area. They were known to take deer, and they came charging out of the woods, barking, and Puppy was right there, set up a 3 or 4 big barks, stood in front of me, and it was like they all came down and went, "Oh, it's you. Is he with you? Oh, okay." And went around. They were all doing this, bouncing up and down with the tails, and they came around and sniffed at me and said, "Oh, yeah, he's okay. He's okay." And then they all went wandering off. And I was like, and Puppy was like, "Oh, okay." And he kind of looked after, and I said, "Come on, Pop." And we went on, continued on our walk, and it was really a scary kind of situation. There were 8 or 10 of them at least. And they had later on they set up hunting crews to go after these dogs, but I didn't have a problem, and I could have. Again, it's the case of I'd always paid attention to Puppy, but he wasn't allowed in the house. I went on a lot of long walks around Liberty Lake and in that area, so I just go like that, snap my fingers, "Come on, Pop," and pop, pop, pop. And so he was my companion, and he just intervened. So we have a feeling of that we're not alone. I guess both Sharon and I do this with the creatures. And we had an experience where, as I was doing my work on newspapers, when I was doing my work with newspapers, I had a very strange interview I was supposed to do with someone who was trying to preserve.
Oh, that guy. Oh, he
was trying to preserve a lake region so that he could have privacy and nobody else could use it. In effect,
his property back onto the lake, and he wanted to make it so you could own private. The state in Maryland had X amount owned X amount, like a verge on a street. They also had it around lakes and rivers and stuff, and he wanted that to be struck down so he could just own this off of the lake.
There's what they call riparian rights, where you're allowed to go up, you're allowed to follow streams, and if you're walking up the stream and it goes to a pond that's public property, and you're walking up, you can walk up the center of the stream and use that as a walkway, or it's a whole lot of law about it. Anyway, we went to visit, and this man had a dog who was supposedly a really, really well-trained watchdog kind of a dog. And he came up to me, was being a little brusque, the dog was, and Sharon said to him,
"Come here." But I grew up with dogs, and they were inside dogs, and said hello and asked him to sit down and would he give me a paw, and he did all those things, and the guy is looking at him like, "Hey, what are you doing to my dog?" I'm like, "I'm not doing anything. Nice dog, thanks."
But apparently he was trying to train him as a watchdog, and so Sharon was going to ruin him by being friends with him. So again, we seem to have this feeling that we ought to be able to treat with these creatures as individuals. At one point, we had a website called Cat Whisker Digest, and part of the point of the website was Paul Corey's "Our Cats People, Do Cats Think." The background was that we were going to set up a foundation. The idea was that we were going to set up a foundation to study the personality of cats and of creatures. If you can say this cat has a personality, that means there's a person there. And it was IFPER, the Institute for Feline Personality Research. We never, at that point, we were far too broke to actually make it happen, but it was an interesting concept. You know, we've seen the cat scientist, we've seen the cat who's lazy, we've seen cats rush to the door to protect the house. You know, so personality, people, that's kind of how we try to invest the cats in our stories as well.
I mean, the cats in the universe Merlin is very magical. I mean, basically rescuing people. And all the cats that Mr. Shaper has all protective.
Barn cats, that's all. You know.
But they all have such personalities. And Shari, your cat familiar is really, you can tell when he's in his cat form, he's definitely cat.
Yep. And he has some cat characteristics, socialization things when he's a human as well. And I think, you know, my family has always viewed pets or animals that you keep as companion animals, they're family members. And so we rejoice when they join us. We actually, Dobie just had her birthday last week, her whelping day. And, you know, we get sad when, it's time for them to leave our lives. And, you know, we mourn them just like we would mourn any other member of the family because they are a member of the family. And they're the ones who know when we're feeling low, and maybe the other family members who are human don't know. They're the ones who come and hang out when, oh, you're sick and you need someone keeping an eye on you, and I'm just going to sit here and watch you to make sure you're okay. So, for us, they've always been family, even though they are not the same species. And I kind of like the earlier idea of, they're aliens among us, and I think that's something that feeds well into how I write. Aliens can look, very different, and they speak a completely different language. And how I interact and how I've taught my kids how to understand dog language or cat language. It's like, okay, you need to understand that the dog is telling you to back off right there. And you're not understanding that because the dog doesn't speak human and you don't speak dog yet. I approach...
But you can create a pigeon, yes.
Yes, and I approach, alien interactions in a very similar fashion when I write science fiction. It's, okay, we're different beings, and now we have to find a way to interact, and I approach it in a very similar way.
And we've got a question in chat. Someone commented last night that it was fun to have a cat walk into a Zoom meeting because they got to hear otherwise stern people use their pet voice.
Yes.
Interpret your pet's responses to you with different voices.
Ooh.
I had a friend who she would find it very confusing when it was just her and me and our dog in the house, because she's like, I can never tell when you're talking to me or the dog because you talk to the dog like she's a person. Although when they're doing something cute, there are times when the baby voice comes in, or when they're waking up, or something. There are times when that'll happen, or if they've been troubled by something, we had to brush them or clip their nails and they're distressed, so they do get a different tone of voice for that. But and then they recognize a play voice, if it's I'm using a voice for my husband, or the kids are using a voice to because it's like, this is the voice we use when we're going to throw the ball or throw the frisbee or run around like crazy people in the house. It's a game we call Run and Growl, Chase and Bark. They recognize that voice and go, oh, yes, I know this. We are going to do this now. But
I tend to talk out deep philosophical questions with the cats. Especially Belle, who, as you can tell, is very serious, very, very hard-minded, actually. And I'll put a question to her, and then I will get the response of, leave me alone, woman. So we just said in a different voice. But it's based on their body language. Sometimes she will actually sit up and pay attention. It's a very serious problem here we're having. Maybe I can't bother with you right now. I'm a cat. What do I care? So it's fun to have interaction with pets. Pets are good for you if you interact with them and keep them in your attention. There's a reason people have pets. It's not just self-indulgent. It's good for both sides.
We have several times over the years experienced some difficult medical times. Mm-hmm. And the first time this happened, when Sharon and I were together, I had two in relatively short order. First, I had a hernia operation, and then I guess a year and a half later, I screwed my back up very seriously, to the point where I think I spent 12 days in bed. And the doctor, I was very lucky because I had talked to the doctor. I said, listen, tomorrow's my birthday. Can I at least have some wine, some sangria with my dinner or something? And the doctor looked at me and said, if you're having sangria, just have sangria. Don't bother with these muscle relaxants I'm going to give you. The sangria will do the same thing. And so I was able to spend some time with sangria by my bedside. And at the same time, the cats came up, realized that there was a difficulty, and it was obviously a different set of cats at that point. And I had company And when I had the hernia operation, they had done the same thing. It's like they came up and said, "Oh, you got a problem here? I'll sit over here, or I'll sit over here," leaned on my arms or on my shoulder. Later, I had some heart issues a few years back, and needed to sit in a chair a long time while I was recovering. And I was always covered. That is to say, the cats sort of set up a rotation.
We work it in
Four
shifts.
cats, and they set up a rotation. And one would get up and do their stretch, walk out with a high tail into the other room. And a moment later, another cat from that other room would come wandering in, look down and say, "Ah, there's a place on your feet, or maybe over here on this arm," and sit down with me. And Sharon has experienced that any number of times.
Yes, just recently, the cats have been very, very good with me, helping me recover from recent medical adventures. Does anybody here remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon that used to be the wolf and the dog? They would chase each other.
Oh, the time clock?
The sheepdog and a wolf, and they would, the wolf would be after the sheep, and the dog would be after them, and then the 5 o'clock bell would ring.
Beep.
All right. See you tomorrow, Frank. Bye, George. And clock out, and off they'd go. It was sort of like that with the cats doing and making sure we recovered.
Yeah, Bella basically knows when I'm sick because she's really quiet. Most of the other times, like if I'm not within view, I hear about it. Like basically,
Where are you now?
I'm right here. I haven't left yet.
Oh, I'm corrected here. It was Frank and Ralph, the sheepdog and the wolf.
So, any other influences on your work, or other than just basically keeping you cognitive of alien life forms?
Well,
My dogs actually enforce a break for me. Before we got Dovey, I had started working from home. I had lost a job that I'd been at for an extended period of time and decided that I was going to start working as a freelancer for my paid work. And so I became a technical writer doing editing and freelancing. And Twig would come in and she'd be like, "Let me up on your lap," periodically throughout the day. And it's like, she'd only want to be on my lap for a short time, about 8 to 10 minutes, good break for my arms. And I've got a connective tissue disorder. And so, typing too long straight and mouse work too long is bad for me. And so it was like, oh, Twig is coming to make sure that I take my breaks and don't hurt myself in this new adventure that I'm taking, where I'm using, my hands a whole lot more on a keyboard rather than using voice recognition. So, that was a wonderful, very helpful thing. Dovey doesn't do it quite as much. She has a point in the morning where she's like, "Yes, I need to be in your lap." And then when my foot falls asleep, she goes to the chair. And then in the afternoon, after lunch, she's like, "Oh yes, it is time for some lap. I need some lap." So take your break. You need a break, because she'll put her head on my arm, and they both do this. Like,
Yes.
No, your arm needs to be under my head. My head has to have a spot to rest, and your arm is perfect. That arm rest is not good. No, we don't want that. We don't want your leg. We want your hand. So you will rest it.
Let's see if I can do this. Tripper has taken up the command chair, the co-pilot's chair in this room, and there he is.
Ah,
So normally my keyboard would be where it's blank, when I don't have to turn my entire operation around with the sun, and that's usually where he can be found when I'm working.
and I have a similar chair.
Love that.
And they do seem to know when something has been designated a cat location. My desk is always piled too high, and they generally don't try to sit on my desk. Sharon keeps things neat, and this has lost her about 3/4 of her desk.
I used to have a box, no kidding, where I would put manuscript pages and you'd print them out and put them in. And the coon cats, when we first got Mozart started this. Mozart decided this was such an important box, it was obviously his box. So I got a second box to put the manuscript pages in. And by that time we had Trooper, and Trooper was like, oh, cool, my box. So I have a box on my desk, but it is not for manuscript pages anymore.
It's for cats.
Cat station, yes.
So we had got the 5-minute wrap-up warning, and so letting people know, Sharon and I will be appearing in the next panel on ship protectors. That's going to be 11:30 my time, 12:30 your time.
12:30 my time.
And Nari is going to be at, I'm blanking on the title of the panel, at 11:15.
Assistive tech in science fiction. So.
And then tomorrow, I will be on a panel with Walter and Ms. Gnarly
on that
here.
one too.
And Tyler and
and that's probably going to be a somewhat more serious panel than this one.
this was a serious panel.
And Sharon and Steve's meeting is going to be at 3 p.m. My time. It's a pre-recorded one.
Is that today?
Yeah,
That's today.
Okay, good.
We will be or did, depending on how you like to construct that sentence, read from Trader's Leap. Our favorite bits. We've been doing favorite bits this time instead of just reading from the beginning, because why not?
Okay, and we also thank you panelists for appearing on this panel. Thank you for the audience who are attending. MarsCon is happening, I have to read this, all weekend with events on YouTube, Discord, Twitch, and Zoom. And there will be more details found on the website, marscon.org. Make sure to check out the charity auction. Other events are coming up. And be sure to buy some Girl Scout cookies. Yes, because you've got is your troop handling it this year?
Yeah, we have, I think there are 3 different troops selling cookies, and we're one of them.
I put in an appearance. Excellent.
I do remember we've been to MarsCon as guests of honor twice. We've been very lucky.
Very
And both times, both times we managed to snag Girl Scout cookies to bring home.
Came whipping around the corner, from one panel to another panel. Girl Scout cookies, you saved my life.
It's a great place to sell cookies.
Yes.
So, time to wrap up. Any last words, panelists?
Last words. Take care of my pets.
Yeah, that's it. Take care of your cats and take care of your dogs, and understand them as people. They have personalities. Let them be persons.
And I'm hoping that we get to see everybody in person next year.
Yes.
Good deal.
That would be great.
One hopes.
Stay healthy, do what you can so that you can be here next year.
And thank you again for those people who are watching. And thank you, panelists. This was great.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.